This is City Clash Developer Log 4, and in this video, I'm going to show you kind of some of the struggles, but eventually we figured it out, how to actually put our image correctly on the blockchain. This was a little bit tricky because our image is dynamic based on which faction owns the city and which faction owns the country that city is in, and our image will basically change dynamically because of that. And so our first approach was to use an SVG, where on our contract we would kind of create our SVG, and then we would have an image tag within the SVG that would link out to an IPFS file that had like the image of the actual like country's kind of border, and then our surrounding SVG would kind of do the extra like showing the different colors and things like that, because that initial image would be kind of transparent. So let me show you kind of where that is in this contract. So this is the SVG, it's kind of creating this image in the token URI function. And then here it would be grabbing the URL to the IPFS image and adding it to this image tag. And so this was, for a while, this is what we thought would work. But we then kind of soon found out that OpenSea and other marketplaces block this image. Basically, they block the call to this image reference, this URL, and it's actually kind of like a CORS error. And we didn't really think about that. I did lots of work kind of creating these images in this fashion before actually figuring out that OpenSea didn't like that and had those CORS errors. But you can kind of also see how it's getting the points based on that city and kind of showing different colors and things like that in this SVG as well. But anyways, that didn't work. This even has all this stuff here, creating a path in SVG for like a little icon for that faction and things like that. But we found out that we couldn't create our image this way at all. So the next try that we tried to do was use HTML, because on an NFT, you can actually have almost like a web app within your HTML, and it goes in the animation URL parameter in the metadata of the NFT. And so I tried playing around with that, seeing if we could, instead of using SVG to create our image, use like HTML, because HTML usually doesn't have as many of the CORS issues, and we'd kind of just create our image the same way. I also didn't really like that solution because HTML isn't really used for images typically. Like, we kind of want an image here, like that's kind of the main thing. So what we kind of ended up with, and this is something that actually ends up working, and this actually isn't finished, I haven't updated this code to do this, but if we go to, and actually here's an example, just stepping back, going to OpenSea on the testnet, here you can see this image isn't working, and it's because of that CORS error. So anyways, what ended up working was basically using our data that we have on our metadata on our each city, which is going to be the city name, the city country, how many points it is, and using that data, we could then kind of create like a name for that city that would be unique. And so then for each color of image, so say we have 3 factions, then there's 3 factions for the city that owns it, the country that owns it. And so that's a combination of 9 possible images that each city could have, where, different combinations of colors based on who owns it. And so kind of our final solution is just have 9 images for each NFT. Each of those would be hosted on IPFS, so it's not something that we can change or do anything like that. But then on the blockchain directly, we can kind of change which image that NFT is pointed to based on the factions that own it. And I first didn't know this was really possible, because like with IPFS, you have these CIDs. So this is like a hash of the data. And so if you ever change that data, it's going to change this hash. And kind of the idea of that is that really anywhere in the world, that same data, wherever this image is hosted, if you have that same data, it's going to have the same CID. The problem with like what we're wanting to do is we wanted to kind of be able to access specific images for a city based on the faction data. And so I just thought this was no way possible because it had to be based on the CID, which would be changed for different images. But anyways, long story short, as I found out here in Pinata, which is kind of a service that's built on top of IPFS, you can actually upload a whole file, which looks like this, where we can just have each of our images in that file. And so it's going to have the same CID for everything. And then when we click on one of these, it's going to have just the image name at the end. And so then all of our images will use the same CID, but then we'll just change which one we're pointed to based on this file name. And so then we can have a file name that's based on the city name, the city country, and the factions that that own it, so that we can then, change the colors based on that and point to different images. And so that's kind of our kind of the struggle and the progression of how we kind of tried different approaches, tried different things with the image to finally, figure out something that could work with our project to make a really cool thing that allows for us to dynamically change our NFTs. And the other cool thing is that this will be written into the blockchain, so everyone will know, like, okay, we can't just change it from what it is. It's going to be those IPFS images just based on the faction owners. And I think people really like that because it's not like it's pointing to our own servers or anything like that. And it's all just on the blockchain or IPFS for the image data. So pretty excited with being able to figure that out and the final outcome we had. Hopefully this was helpful to you in some way, just to kind of learn a little bit about just the different ways to have your images stored for your NFT project.